Somebody has asked, I would love to hear more. Hello, I would love to hear more about income investing, e.g. options, how best to structure an income producing portfolio, what to pay attention to. Also, is it a good idea at all for someone with lots of time ahead and not huge amounts of money to chase income, or is it better to invest for growth in this situation and forget about income until substantial amounts of money is accumulated? Now, I'm going to take that from the angle of how to produce an income portfolio, because it's there are things that you should try and do. So if you're trying to produce an income from a portfolio, you can buy shares. And the big problem we've got at the moment, as I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, is that companies are cutting their dividends. So they're not either lowering guidance, saying they won't actually be paying out a dividend, or they've actually stopped doing it at all. So for people who buy shares in companies direct dividend and then to use that to live off, that's obviously going to be proving difficult. And of course, the value of those shares have fallen anyway. That's a secondary consideration if you're just living off the yield. So all you're worried about is the income. You're not buying and selling these shares. The thing is to buy funds, income producing funds. You can buy particularly equity income in the UK, global equity income funds, and what they will do is invest in lots of companies, 50 to 100 in each fund, and they will take the dividends that come in from the shares that they hold, and they will produce a payout to investors. So the payouts tend to be more stable and much more diversified. So even those funds will start to see their payouts drop. It's almost inconceivable that they wouldn't, because of the way particularly unit trusts I'm talking about here are structured and the way they are able to pay income out. When we produce research on 80/20 Investor, one of the things that I've done is produce an income heat map. So it's like a heat map with different colors for each year going back before the financial crisis. And it tells you who has grown their dividend year on year, who has cut it, who has kept it the same. So visually, you can quickly see funds that have grown their dividend year on year, because if you're investing for income and you want to live off that income, you want it to grow to beat inflation. Otherwise, what will happen is your income will lose value. It will actually, purchasing power will drop. So the thing you want to look at is, of course, you look at yield, because that's about the amount of money that you could potentially, or the percentage income you could get from the amount you spend to buy a fund or share. But of course, in this environment, that yield figure is going to be probably unreliable. And so you want to look at payouts, really, how consistent they've been in payouts, and particularly focus on the financial crisis, because if a fund had managed to keep its dividends and payouts going through that period, then it has a probably better chance of doing so now, because it's done it through a previous bad period. Think globally when you're building portfolios. That's the other thing, because people always focus on the UK. To give you an example, over in Japan, a lot of companies in Japan are very cash heavy. They have been for a long time, had a lot of cash on their books, and while their dividends they were paying out were low by comparison to other companies around the world, it does mean their dividends now are going to be much more sustainable. Yeah, it may only be about 2%, but it may be more sustainable because they've actually got the money to pay out. So look globally, because you could benefit from diversifying your income stream. The other thing I would say is, do look at investment trusts. Now, investment trusts work well because the way they're structured is they are able to hold back income and smooth out their income payments over time. And unlike unit trust, that means that they, even in years where they have a hit to their income that they receive, the dividends, they can increase their payouts to the investors who hold shares in their investment trust. Now, on the heat maps I did for the investment trust world, what you can see, there are investment trusts out there that have never cut their dividends. They've grown them year upon year upon year. So there are ways out there in which you can get investments funds that have shown a history of producing a reliable income. Doesn't mean they always will. The other thing to do is make sure, if you're looking at investment trusts, you can find on the Association of Investment Companies, the AIC, they have or they list all the investment trusts, and you can see something called the reserve or revenue reserve cover, and it tells you the amount of money they've got and how many years worth of dividend they could afford to cover from their existing cash. and it's normally stated in years. So 0.8 is about the average. So you can get insight into investment trusts, how likely they are to be able to cover future payouts. And the other thing I'd mention before I move on is if you're an income investor, if you're living off the income that's being produced by a portfolio, it makes sense to have a cash buffer. So you have 1 to 2 years worth of income in a cash buffer, which may be within your investment platform that you use, and the yield that is naturally produced by the investments drops into that cash buffer, but you actually draw your income from the cash part. So if you have a period like now where the income being produced by the investments actually falls, you can still draw from your cash reserve here, but you don't have to cash in your investments at a lower price. So if you're living off the income, you're not so bothered about the value of the shares themselves. You're more bothered about the ability for the investments to produce a reliable income.